justice and peace and equality.
Game Changers Magazine, Game Changers Media Network, Voices of the Village podcast, and we're back with Mr. Ricardo Ute.
Thank you for having me.
James Earl Acey, Lodge number 600, the Worshipful Master. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing just fine.
Good. It's great to have you on the show. It's great to have you on the show. And we're just going to jump right into it. We're just going to jump right into things. The biggest question in the room, the biggest elephant in the room is the misconception of Freemasonry.
Okay.
All right? The misconception of Freemasonry. You hear in the streets all the time where people are saying, hey, Freemasonry is this, Freemasonry is that, it's the Illuminati. What is Freemasonry and what is not Freemasonry?
Okay. So first, let me introduce myself formally.
Okay.
So, my name is Ricardo Ute. I'm the Worshipful Master of James Earl Acey Lodge number 600, which is in Henry County, and it's under the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, where the Honorable Primus T. James sits as our 19th Most Worshipful Grand Master. Now, your question was, what is Freemasonry?
Correct.
Freemasonry is a fraternity. It's an organization of men where we come together to make good men better.
Okay.
That's the easiest definition, right?
Okay.
We just come together to help each other build and help each other be better for our community. So whenever I explain Freemasonry to people, I say that Freemasonry is a brotherhood. It's a fraternity of brothers that do charitable work. We're not a charitable organization, but we do charity in the community.
Okay. And I see James Earl Acey doing a lot of work in the community under the Rising Sons Foundation.
Yes.
Doing masquerade balls and those great things. Now, growing up, I grew up in a household of masonry. My father, my mother, Eastern Star. And we saw Masons as leaders in our community, sort of like those deacons of defense, those guys who answered the call. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And today you talk to people coming up in Masonry or people who are, kind of looking at, okay, you say Freemasonry, and they're thinking like secret society, Illuminati. Why do people misconceive that concept?
So it's a long history.
Okay.
Of built-up propaganda, starting as early as 1825 when Andrew Jackson was running for the presidency.
Okay.
Right? He was also a Freemason. So you had these anti-Masonic groups that came out and put out all this propaganda to basically degrade and downplay what Freemasons and Freemasonry is.
Okay.
And, even I'm thinking around about 1890, the Catholic Church put out the same type of propaganda, and the reason the Catholic Church did it was so that they could devalue the organization, because we support free thinkers. We support people thinking for themselves. And, not to speak on the Catholic Church like that, but the people at that time, they just really didn't appreciate us doing that. So you have all of this built-up propaganda about things that people don't understand and don't know. Okay. So the easiest thing to do is to take your own ideology of groups that have done such amazing things in the community and build up these falsehoods about them, so that we can move the blame of what's going on in our society from our own person, our own faults, and put it on something else.
Okay.
So it's just being able to not take responsibility for those things.
Most definitely. And I can understand that now. And I remember, again, growing up, seeing in Savannah, Georgia, seeing it, down in coastal Georgia, where I seen a lot of Masons operate. I mean, they were cooking the big fish. It was cookouts on Jacob Island. It was community service, feed a kid programs. It was taking care of parks, making sure the community was there. Almost like a Christian or a spiritual Black Panther Party, so to speak. Without the actual guns and weapons.
Well, yeah. So there is a deep history of Freemasonry, not only in this country, but a deep history of Black Freemasonry in this nation as well.
Okay.
Right. So the things that you're talking about, seeing them in the community, doing fish fries, feeding the hungry, serving the community. There was a lot of that, right?
Okay.
So the Black Freemasonry, or Prince Hall Freemasonry overall, has been very supportive of the community. It helped build a lot of strong young men over the history into very powerful men. You know, very notable men were also members of this organization.
Okay.
So, you know, even when you talk about the King family, who are from Georgia themselves, Stockbridge, Georgia to be exact, many members of the King family were also Prince Hall Masons. So,
Oh, wow.
You know, the Prince Hall Masons were largely a part of the civil rights movements in the 1950s and 60s. So they've always been around. We've always been doing things, and, you know, we've always supported the community. So, you know, it's kind of funny that we have such propaganda against organizations like ours when we've always supported our communities as much as you have seen yourself.
Absolutely. And, you know, and I think the propaganda is lack of education.
It is.
It's lack of education. It's almost like, yo, what do they do? It's like, I guess people take it as so dark or so like, hey, what's the mystery behind Masonry and all of those things, to the point where they feel like they're left out, or they feel like, hey, is something going on, or what's going on with the third eye and all this kind of stuff. The dollar bill, all these misconceptions that people put around Masonry.
Well, yeah, I would tell you, even that's funny as well when you talk about, you know, the third eye and things like that. You know, all of that is more biblical than we realize.
Okay.
Right? So when we talk about the third eye, we're talking about knowledge. So even if you look into spirituality, the third eye represented the pineal gland, which is the eye of enlightenment. The pineal gland is actually right here in the middle of your forehead.
Okay.
And that's what it represented. It represented being able to understand and receive knowledge on a higher level.
Okay.
So that's when you get into spirituality, and, you know, chakras and things like that. That's when you start learning those things. But if you look at the history of Black people coming from 1619 all the way to 1865, what you learn is a lot of that knowledge was hidden from you. Right. So then they built this whole ideology to kind of keep you in one place so that you didn't quite understand your own self, your own spirituality, the knowledge of your people. So now we still kind of suffer from that in these same days. We suffer from not being able to understand that knowledge. So it's a huge misconception. It's a huge, and I hate to say, for lack of a better phrase, it's a huge level of ignorance.
Okay. I mean, I could definitely understand that when we're looking at, you know, Masons operating in the community. A lot of them don't, you know, just wear the tag. Hey man, they got a G on their shirt. A lot of them are real civil servants, and I mean, making an impact in the community. We got doctors who are Masons. We got lawyers who are Masons. I mean, it seems to be a bigger circle than the eye can actually imagine, right?
It is. It is a large network of brothers and men coming together to help in the best way that we can. And they come from all different walks of life, right? And I know one of the things that we hear all the time is, oh, you know, that's an old man's fraternity, or you got to be from a certain background to be a Mason. You know, I'm the leader of the lodge, but I'm also a mailman, right? Right. So, you know, in my professional life, I deliver your mail, but you know, at night I'm a Prince Hall Freemason vigilante. You know, I'm out there doing work and, you know, saving the community. But, you know, we come from all walks of life, and we come together to see what we can do to help our community and better our environment. Correct.
And I could now. You know, you spoke that you are a Mason, and you are, you know, one of the leaders of the lodge in high rank position. Tell me this: what inspired you to actually become a Mason?
Actually, I never really thought about Freemasonry.
Okay.
Right. I had a friend who I worked with for a very long time, who always had my back. You know, he was always looking out for me. He was always there for me in the toughest times of my life. He was there for me. And I remember having a conversation with him one day, and he was telling me about this guy that was talking about Freemasonry that we worked with. And that was the first time I found out that he was a Prince Hall Freemason.
Okay.
And so knowing that he was a very good man, and you know looked out for me, do as much as he could in the community, like he was always doing something.
Right.
I was wondering, why would this great man, this good person that I know, be a part of an organization like this? So I just kept telling him I wanted to become a Freemason.
Okay.
And I asked him for 2 weeks if I could become a Freemason. Eventually he was like, do you really want to do it?
Right.
And I said, yeah, I do. And so he set me up to be able to become a Freemason, Prince Hall Freemason. I became a Freemason in Truth and Union Lodge number 594, which is in Lawrenceville. And that was about 2016. I came into the organization in 2016.
Okay.
And I spent most of that time just studying the history of the organization.
Right.
So, and then around about 2020, 2021, we started James Earl AC Lodge in Stockbridge.
Okay.
And so I'm what we would consider a charter member of James Earl AC Lodge number 600. I was the first senior deacon of the lodge. I was the second senior warden of the lodge, and I am currently the third worshipful master of this lodge.
Okay. And so you didn't actually grow up in
No.
the Masons around you and seeing this being in.
Well, being that this is Georgia, right?
Okay,
and I grew up in Atlanta, I'm sure that there were plenty of Prince Hall Masons around me. I just did not know it, right? Because we have this thing in Freemasonry where we do a lot of work,
Okay.
but we don't tell people who we are.
Right.
So we're very, I don't want to say secretive, but we don't ask for the acknowledgement. We just do the work. That's
Correct.
it. So I remember growing up, here in Atlanta, around a lot of strong black men.
Okay.
And I had a lot of great examples. And I'm sure, I would say about 80% of them were probably Prince Hall Masons, and I just didn't know that.
And never even mentioned it.
No. In fact, I'll tell you, I was adopted when I was 12 years old.
Okay.
And when I became a Prince Hall Mason, I was talking to my mother, and she told me, she said, your grandfather was a Mason.
Oh, wow.
I said, oh, really? She said, yeah, he was. He was actually a Prince Hall Mason. He used to go down to Auburn Avenue all the time.
Right.
And I was like, what? This entire time I've known this man since I was 12 years old. I never knew he was a Mason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, and so Auburn Avenue is one of the premier.
Yes, so Auburn Avenue is actually our Grand Lodge.
Okay.
Right, so it's 330 Auburn Avenue. And it was built in I want to say in the 30s, if I get my dates correct here. I want to say that it was built in around the late 20s, early 30s.
Okay.
At the time, that was a time period of John Wesley Dobbs. Right. So John Wesley Dobbs is a very notable person in Atlanta.
Yes, he is.
But we don't know why. Right? So John Wesley Dobbs was the Grand Master of the Prince Hall Masons from the early 30s until his death in 1961.
Okay.
Right? And he's notable for doing a lot of things, including getting roughly about 20,000 blacks registered to vote.
Okay.
In the mayoral election for Hartsfield. He made a deal with Hartsfield saying that if I can get you elected as mayor, would you promise to put black police officers on the Black Atlanta police force? And he said,
wow.
He said, yeah, sure. So he got him elected, and he got 8 black police officers on the Atlanta police force. Now, they weren't allowed to arrest any white people.
Right. Okay.
Just being able to get them on the Atlanta police force was a pivotal move.
So you telling me it was a period in time in Atlanta where influential African American and black man was living here, noble cause, with all the black people in Atlanta that we have today.
Yes.
It was no police officers at one time in Atlanta?
There was no black police officers.
No black police officers.
No, there was no black police officers at one time.
Okay.
But it was because of the work of not only the Prince Hall Masons at that time, but the black community. Because you got to remember, the black community was all one at that time.
Right.
You know? And so it was the work of the Prince Hall Masons and other fraternal organizations that existed at that time. Because mind you, the Prince Hall Masons weren't the only organization.
Okay.
It was a very prominent organization, but it wasn't the only organization at that time.
Right.
So with the Prince Hall Masons, all of the other black organizations that existed, and the black community that came together to do these things, to make sure that these things got done.
Okay.
So even when we talk about 330 Auburn Avenue, it wasn't just the Prince Hall Masons that got that building built.
Right.
Because that money came out of black folks' pockets.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
But it was the black community that
Okay.
came together to make sure that that building got built.
Wow.
Yeah, so
wow.
you can imagine how strong of a community our community was at that time.
Okay.
You know, for all of us to come together, even whether you were a Mason or not, you came together to make sure this building got built.
Wow.
You know, so that building also housed the WRD radio, which I believe was the first black radio show in Georgia or in Atlanta.
Okay.
And it also it housed in the basement the Southern Christian League, SELC.
Okay. Yeah.
It housed it in, so it got its start in the basement of
Okay.
Auburn Avenue as well.
So this was like a hub, Auburn Avenue, because Dr. King and all the great leaders, all of them used to huddle in this one little area. And
Yes.
it answers the question of why we have the Auburn Fest today.
Yes. So I mean, you got to think Auburn Avenue was popping at that time.
Yes, sir. Yes,
You know,
sir.
and it was pretty much just a black community.
Okay.
But it was very prominent in the black community. There were so many things on Auburn Avenue at that time.
Okay.
And you know, our Grand Lodge was sat at the forefront of all of that.
Right.
So you imagine all of this work being done, all of these decisions being made right there on Auburn Avenue here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Man, that is profound. That is, I'm learning something new today. When it comes down to it, what led you to start documenting and be a historian? Because you are diligent in your craft when it comes to documenting this history. I mean, I'm looking at all the paper, but I've read some of your literature.
Yes.
And witness for myself your diligence in studying,
So,
the history.
When I first came into Freemasonry, I had just got married.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And right after I got married, my wife got pregnant, and I really couldn't be as involved in the organization as I wanted to be.
Right.
So I felt the best way that I can contribute is to start studying the research and being able to tell the research to all of our new members.
Okay.
And it just, over time, it became a passion of mine to learn the history of our organization, not just Prince Hall Masonry, but Freemasonry overall.
Okay.
Because once I started getting into it, and I started learning all the great things that we've done, all the important people that have come from this organization, I just couldn't stop, man. So I just kept learning, kept writing. And I think it's important even for people that come into this organization, or people just curious about it, that they have something that they can read that gives them a good idea
Right.
of what the organization is and what we do.
Okay. And I remember, growing up as a young man, watching Malcolm X, be the leader of the Islam, and those guys dressed up in black suits, But and I'm not saying that Masons represent Christianity, or one particular religion, but in the South we saw more Masons operate from a Christian standpoint, as far as a belief system, and to see those men in black and see how they represented, it's something about a man in a black suit.
Yes.
That represents strength. Tell us what the black suit and what all about that and how it represents what it
Well,
represents.
believe it or not, the black suit, it's more modern now than
Okay.
it was in our past.
Okay.
So you're talking about the early times of our organization. I would say the men always dressed up, or they wore suits, but they weren't always black.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So they would wear just regular twill suits or wool suits, whatever. They could be brown, blue, whatever.
Right.
I would say maybe within the last 30, 40 years, the black suit has become pivotal, and it has become the mark of Prince Hall Freemasons.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
it's more prominent with Prince Hall Masonry than it is with Grand Lodge State. So just so that we're in understanding, there are two recognized groups of Freemasons in this nation. So there's a Grand Lodge of State. So there's a Grand Lodge, whatever state it is. So here it'll be the Grand Lodge of Georgia.
Okay.
And then there's the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of State, which here would be Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia.
Okay.
So those are the two only legitimate and recognized groups of Masons, or Grand Lodges, as we would call them, Grand Lodges in this nation.
Now, before we go to break, we were talking about, the bogus masonry.
Yes.
And, Prince Hall affiliate. But we were talking about, I believe you were indulged in a couple of conversations on TikTok or Instagram, or one of those social media platforms, where it kind of like got, the clandestine Mason, I should say.
Right.
The bogus Masons, whatever. I'm not familiar with it. But right. What happened on social media, and what kind of transpired there? Because you guys blew it out the roof. I mean, everybody was watching.
So, for a long time, there's a long history of many of us fighting clandestine and bogus Masonry over this nation. Most recently, I would say within the last 6 to 7 months, we were very pivotal on TikTok with our discussions. And what happened most recently, which I was a part of, we came across a young man who was a part of a clandestine organization that he wasn't aware of here in Georgia.
Okay.
And when he was notified of that, we gave him all the information that he needed to know that organization was clandestine. Now, what makes an organization is clandestine is that it's operating without the authority of a Grand Lodge, right?
Oh, wow.
So you cannot operate without the authority of a recognized and legitimate Grand Lodge. If you do that, your organization is considered clandestine.
Right.
And all of our legitimate and recognized organizations, we can draw our lineage back to what we would consider the Mother Grand Lodge, which is the United Grand Lodge of England.
Okay.
If you cannot draw your lineage back to that Grand Lodge, you're 9 times out of 10, you are a clandestine organization.
Oh, wow.
And then you also, so there's a difference between clandestine and bogus. A bogus organization is an organization not, they're forming themselves as a Masonic group, but they do not act as a Masonic group.
Okay.
They do not do things as a Masonic group would do. They do not follow any procedures, any bylaws or anything like that. They just kind of made up their own rules.
Okay.
And then they say, oh, we're Masons.
Yeah.
But that's what we would call a bogus organization. So there is a difference between the two.
Okay, so it is a difference between the bogus and the clandestine.
Yes.
You guys, man, we got to go to commercial breaks. You guys stay tuned. We got the Worshipful Master, Mr. Noble Ricardo Ute of James Earl AC Lodge number 600 right here in Stockbridge, Georgia. You guys stay tuned. Game Changers Media Network, Game Changers Magazine, Voices of the Village podcast, where change starts with conversation. Ease up.
At ViStar Credit Union, you inspire us to deliver on our promise to do good for our members and our communities. That's why we offer more banking options, like better rates and no hidden fees. We also give back, donating several $1 million to hundreds of nonprofits each year. Better financial lives, stronger communities. That's our focus. ViStar Credit Union. Do good. Bank better.
The very first time I was appointed as a judge, as a magistrate court judge in 2012. And after I took that oath, I realized this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. This is how I can impact lives in a different way. I've already done the legal work. I was already impacting lives as a lawyer, but as a judge, you can impact lives. You can impact lives differently as a judge. And for me, not only do I always talk about being fair and impartial, because I have to be fair and impartial as a judge and treat both sides the same with fairness and being impartial and neutral, but also serve with humanity and compassion, because I'm able to listen to what the litigants are saying, what the attorneys are saying, and of course with applying the law and the facts, hearing the facts and applying the law and always following the law. So I can serve with compassion and humanity, and that's what I do. And so for me, that passion is every day. You know, every day something happens that reminds me that this is where I'm supposed to be and this is what I should be doing. It's a calling.
Game Changers Magazine, Game Changers Media Network, Voices of the Village podcast, and we're back with Worshipful Master Ricardo Ute, James Earl AC, Lodge number 600, right here in Stockbridge, Georgia. But before we went to break, we were talking about the history of of Freemasonry.
Yes.
And the misconception of Freemasonry, Illuminati, and all of those weird things, the third eye, all of those weird things that kind of like people have when it comes to the misconception of Masonry. But you as a historian have shown yourself approved, knowing, following the lineage of where most Masons in Georgia follow by, which is Prince Hall Masonry,
Yes.
And you guys just celebrated, was it 250 years at the Capitol, or recognized at the Capitol? What happened at the Capitol?
So at the Capitol here in Atlanta, we were recognized for the work that we do in the community.
Okay.
So the representatives at the Capitol decided to give us a proclamation recognizing the work that we do in making March 6th the official Prince Hall Freemasonry Day here in Georgia.
Okay.
So, but we just celebrated 250 years of Prince Hall Masonry in this nation.
Okay.
So that's from 1775 to this present year of 2025.
Okay.
250 years.
250 years.
Yes.
Man, that's a strong presence. I believe that's the oldest fraternity.
Yes. So we're the oldest black fraternity in America. But Freemasonry overall is the oldest fraternity in the world.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I hear all the time, Prince Hall. You Google him, it's little information. It's information, but it's not like we're talking about a nobleman, a person who fought for his community. Who is Prince Hall, and why is every Mason calling themselves or most Masons calling themselves Prince Hall Masons, or why is that even recognized as a quote unquote standard term?
So we call ourselves Prince Hall Masons in honor of the man Prince Hall.
Okay.
Right? So Prince Hall was the first worshipful master of a lodge, of African Lodge 459 in Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Right? He was an abolitionist. He was a man who he fought for the freedom and rights of black men here in America. And he did a lot of amazing things. He has an unbelievable history of work that he's done. So he is believed to have been initiated into Freemasonry in between 1775 and 1778.
Okay.
Once he was initiated, he fought for the equal treatment of black men. And while he was doing that, he also tried to become a member of the different lodges that were there in Boston, Massachusetts, which was St. Andrew's Lodge and St. John's Lodge.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So his goal was not to create Freemasonry for black men. That was not his goal at all.
Okay.
His goal was to get Freemasonry to treat black men equal to white men.
Wow.
Right? So over time, we created, this organization that became just for black men.
Okay.
Only because of the atmosphere that we've lived in for, all of these years, right? So
Right.
we know of the segregation between black people and white people. So Black Freemasonry just kind of fell into place because we were not allowed to be a part of their organizations as well. And so that's how we end up having 250 years of history with this organization. But because of the work that Prince Hall did, that is the reason why we call ourselves Prince Hall Masons in honor of Prince Hall himself.
So And so was Prince Hall like a slave, or like did he was he like a Harriet Tubman, a Nat Turner, or what was his role? I mean, because 250 years ago, African American people were not well respected in America.
So based on the history that we have, right, we would not necessarily say that he was a slave.
Okay.
We would say that maybe he was under a contract of indentured servitude.
Okay.
Now that is an argument that we can all have because we know that during that time period, there were a lot of black people in slavery.
Okay.
But he came in through the ports of Boston, Massachusetts, right?
Okay.
And the person he came with eventually set him free. So we estimate he came into the ports, I want to say around when he was maybe 11 years old.
Okay.
And he was released from his servitude or his slavery when I want to say maybe 14 years, 17 years after that.
Okay.
If we know indentured servitude contracts are roughly about 7 years apiece.
Okay.
So the math kind of adds up.
Right.
So it's
right.
in my opinion that he was more than likely a part of an indentured servitude contract,
Okay.
and maybe not directly slavery. So there is two different forms of service or slavery. So that you have chattel slavery, which most black people were a part of, or 80% were,
Okay.
chattel slavery, and then you had indentured servitude contracts, which would have encompassed all people who could not afford to live on their own. So they would sign a contract with a wealthy, a wealthy person who could
Okay.
pay them for their service.
Okay.
So, but Prince Hall, he did learn a lot from being in that service of another man. I'm trying to remember his name. William Hall, that was his name.
Okay.
William Hall did have, Prince Hall was in the service of William Hall.
Okay.
And he learned a lot of things from William Hall. He learned leather tanning, which allowed him to, once he was free, it allowed him to create his own business, and that allowed him to meet other notable people around the area, including Joseph Warren, who was he was the Grand Master of St. Andrew's Lodge. Yes, St. Andrew's Lodge.
Okay.
And he also met John Hancock. There was a group of people that he met during that time period because they would come in and look for the service of his tanning company, leather
Okay.
tanning company.
Okay. And so Prince Hall was working as a leather tanner under William Hall?
Yes,
William Hall?
he was working as a leather
Okay.
tanner under William Hall. Once William Hall set him free, he continued that craft.
Okay.
As a leather tanner. He also became a pastor. And he did a lot of things, man. He was a very intelligent man. Very
Okay.
intelligent man.
And so was he also like encouraging like African American men or advocating for African American men to be a part of the United States Army, or?
He was. He looked at it as a way for black men to receive respect and to receive their freedom if they
Okay.
were in service in the military during the Revolutionary War.
Okay.
So it is believed that he may have fought in one of the battles. I think the Battle of Bunker Hill with Grand Master Joseph Warren.
Okay. Okay.
So there is, I would say it is believed that
Right.
Joseph Warren may have offered Prince Hall a charter or offer him maybe access to become a member or give him a charter to start his own lodge
Okay.
if he came and fought beside him in the Battle of Bunker Hill. Now we don't know if that's true.
Okay.
We don't know. There is a Prince Hall that was on the registry who fought in that battle, but we don't know if that was our Prince Hall.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Because during that time period, I believe there was anywhere between 7 and 11 Prince Halls in Boston, Massachusetts at that time.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So when we talk about you said something about getting chartered by the guy that he was in the army with, and is that how we document that Prince Hall Masonry is legit Masonry? Because you hear a lot about Prince Hall affiliate, Prince Hall original. clandestine, bogus, all of these terms. Like, how does that document back to
We
it?
actually received our charter. We got our charter in 1784.
Okay.
Right? And that charter was issued from the Premier Grand Lodge of England in 1784.
In
So,
1784.
right. So that charter is the charter that makes us legitimate and recognized Masons.
Okay.
Because it came from a legitimate body that we would consider to be the Mother Grand Lodge. So
Okay.
during that time, the Premier Grand Lodge was one of the main Grand Lodges. There was two Grand Lodges in England at that time. There was the Ancient Grand Lodge of England and the Premier Grand Lodge of England. And eventually they combined, I believe in 1807, to become the United Grand Lodge of England.
Okay.
So our charter comes from that Mother Grand Lodge.
Okay.
So that's what makes us legitimate Masons, because we have a lineage coming from I would consider to be the beginnings of
Right.
organized or established Freemasonry in this world.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And so, kind of taking it back, with Prince Hall receiving the charter, coming from the Grand Lodge of England, we still see lines of like racism, right? do we not, like, because it almost seems, or it's kind of like there but not there, that some white Masons aren't Prince Hall Masons, or all black Masons are most black Masons are Prince Hall Masons.
I think it's a huge misconception.
Okay.
Because you actually have black men that are Grand Lodge Estate Masons,
Okay.
and then you have some Caucasian men that are Prince Hall Masons.
Oh wow!
Right?
Wow!
But of course, overall,
Right.
A good percentage
Yes.
of Caucasian men are Grand Lodge Estate, and a good percentage of black men are Prince Hall Masons.
Right.
But that separation doesn't really exist anymore, not on the large scale.
Not on
now,
a large scale.
We have heard, some rumblings from, those outer lying towns and cities that they may still be against it, but, those are things that we can't really control. Overall, you do see some camaraderie between black men and white men that are Freemasons.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now, as we know, we're living in a day and age of internet.
Yes.
In the day and age of internet, everybody is on the internet, Googling, watching YouTube videos, and it's so much information out there about Masonry today. Tell us about the internet Mason. You know what I mean? What we call, because what I've noticed is a difference, between those real Masons that in real life, and then is the YouTube Mason.
So what you find is a lot of people, they're trying to understand what we do,
Okay.
and in their own way become a part of our organization.
Okay.
Now, we as real Freemasons know how to separate the two.
Okay.
We know a real Freemason when we meet them.
Okay.
But you have a lot of people that have opinions
Right.
about our organization, or they think they know everything that they need to know about being a Freemason, so they would consider themselves Masons.
Okay.
But we tell them right out that you're not a Mason. We know you're not a Mason.
Yeah.
Right? So the only way that you can become a real Freemason
Okay.
is to join a real Freemason lodge.
Yes,
Real
yes.
Freemason lodge, Grand Lodge, and all what's for.
Okay.
But you cannot. We use the term internet Mason for those people who just come in and say, "Hey, yeah, I know all about you guys," and they start rumbling things off, and we're
Okay.
like, "You have no idea what you're talking about, man." So you also run into what we would call anti Masons.
Okay.
Right? So you run into people who have created this whole rhetoric and built a platform
Okay.
on their hatred for Freemasonry.
Okay.
And when you really get down to it and you start having these conversations with these people, these guys, these women, whoever you meet, it's always either something really, really personal that they experienced,
Right.
or it's just they're trying to pass the buck of the lack of effort and growth in their own lives.
Okay.
So,
okay.
you know, for instance, you may run into somebody who says, oh, you know, I can't get, you know, a foot up in the world because the Masons got they foot on my neck.
Yeah.
Which makes absolutely no sense, right? I'm out here, you know, trying to teach the kids. I don't have time to put my foot on your neck, right? So, you know, it's a lot of, you know, passing the buck, personal situations. We've had people, you know, tell us, oh, well, you know, a Mason was stalking me. Which,
oh, wow.
I'm going to say this. What an individual does
Right.
is it only represents that individual.
Okay.
Now, if that individual turns out to be a Mason or claims to be a Mason,
Right.
that does not, it has nothing to do with our organization. Right?
Correct.
It's not an image of our organization.
Okay.
Right? Just like for any other organization, if you say that you're a Christian, but you go out here and you commit a crime, is it Christianity's fault? No.
Nah.
Absolutely. If you're a part of a church and you go out and you commit a crime, is it your church's fault? No, it's not. So these individuals, if they are doing something that does not represent the organization that I'm a part of, we do not recognize them.
Okay.
Because Masons are supposed to be moral and upright men.
Right.
We're supposed to represent what men are supposed to be, right?
Okay.
So we're always moral. We do our best to do the right things and tell the truth. We move in a way that will represent our community in a positive manner.
Okay. And so when we're talking about, you know, I mean, the history of Masonry and Prince Hall Masonry, and, you know, a lot of people, grandparents and granddads and, you know, uncles were Masons, or it kind of flowed. But you really didn't know. All you did was see dad or your uncles walk out of the house with that black briefcase, and you're kind of like, well, where are they going? You know what I mean? So I guess people feel like, okay, you know, that it's so many secrets and so many there. But like you said, being a Mason is more about being morally, you know, having morals and values and bringing morals and values to life. How important is that?
The morals and values?
Yes, sir.
Very important.
Okay.
Right? It's very important because you are the example for the next generation.
Okay.
Right? So there's a line that I always say, and I'll tell anybody this, young or old, you know, as a Mason, you should always walk in an upright manner.
Okay.
Right? And when you call yourself a Mason, you only have two things in life. And this really doesn't only apply to Masons, it applies to men directly.
Okay.
I say in life, you only have two things.
Right.
You have your word and your name.
Wow.
Right? If your word means nothing, your name means nothing.
Wow.
Right? So that applies to men, period.
Yes.
So I also equate that to this organization, to being a Freemason. Right?
Okay.
If I cannot walk in an upright and moral manner, then I don't deserve to be a part of this organization, because that's what this organization is supposed to be. It was supposed to take this good man and make him better.
Wow.
And over time it did.
Yes.
Because it taught me how to be more patient. It taught me how to, you know, subdue my passions, calm down, and pay more attention to things, and move differently in this world.
Okay.
You know, what we tend to do sometimes, we move in anger. But now I move more logically.
Right.
And I've learned that over time, partially because I'm a part of this organization.
Absolutely, man. A phenomenal organization doing great things in the community. I mean, always out there giving the community a helping hand. I'm seeing firsthand James Earl AC Lodge number 600, Stockbridge, Georgia. You guys are advocating in the community. I mean, daily. It's you guys are everywhere. But plenty of events coming up, plenty community engagement things happening. Yes. So we're going to go to another commercial break, and we're going to talk about what James Earl AC Lodge number 600 is doing, what they have planned, and how you can partner with this amazing organization, whether you want to be a Mason or not, or whether you just want to advocate in your community and kind of get with people who are like-minded. They're right here in our community, and they look like us. You guys stay tuned. Game Changers Magazine, Game Changers Media Network, Voices of the Village podcast, where change starts with conversation. Ease up.
Have you fallen and can't get up? After the car accident, you just don't feel the same. DePaul Clinic is dedicated to help you relieve the pain. We specialize in personal injury setbacks, guiding your journey back to normal. We provide head-to-toe examinations, X-ray, and MRI, treating personal injury with adjustment, non-surgical decompression, and laser therapy. Our pain management specialists pride themselves on helping our patients to a speedy recovery every step of the way. Call us today at 770-471-1421 for booking, or visit us online at www.depaulclinic.com for more information. Our reviews speak for themselves. DePaul Clinic, the good hands quality care plan.
Fresh Communities, facilitating restoration for equitable and sustainable healthy communities, is a grassroots culmination of over 30 years of Black liberation for rural southern Georgia through creative implementation of economic, political, and cultural entities with a strong Black agenda. Our mission is a worldwide coordinated collaborative strategy empowering every individual with information, opportunities, and creative pathways to make healthy life choices and establish a family and cultural legacy. Fresh is the next genesis for Black liberation that combines proven community strategies with new technological approaches that enhances, restores, and sustains our community. Selecting Census Tract 9504 as the initial site for the Black Liberation Demonstration will create and sustain an ecosystem for justice, economic stability, and wealth creation that can be replicated within the region. The Fresh team, through our Justice Initiative, has been totally involved in leading the effort to demand justice. Plans are in place for a community complex at 1200 College Street that will reflect the values and curriculum of the Highlander Center and a FAR 31 business incubator within the hub zone areas. Utilizing the former Atlanta Life building on Ossie Davis Parkway as the Mall of Justice, creating central offices and structure for the local and national Black movements operations, along with the leadership and youth training. Enabling clear choices for liberation by creating an ecosystem for systemic growth with a shopping center to house and a grocery and dollar store that will market products from Black farmers and producers. This ecosystem of a community center increasing income of over $13 million, thusly supporting new housing development and commercial opportunities that are truly enhancing community wealth. A percentage of the profits from the store and contracts will be placed in a community endowment utilizing a non-direct recognition financial instrument, assuring continued and sustained community growth and wealth.
Game Changers Magazine, Game Changers Media Network, Voices of the Village podcast, and we're back with worshipful master of the James Earl AC Lodge number 600, Honorable Ricardo Ute.
We're going to leave the honorable out. I'm not honorable yet, and maybe I'll get there one day.
Hey, man.
But I am the worshipful master of James Earl AC Lodge number 600.
Man, that's big. When we talk about moral and character, we talk about, Masons being men of standard,
Yes.
I think people are looking for that, honorable. That's an honorable man. That's a man of valor. So to
absolutely.
speak. I think our women are looking for men to step up in our community of that caliber, and just to know that we have a group of men here doing the work, setting the standard, being men of their homes. How important is it for a Mason to be a man of his home?
Oh, it's absolutely important. So this organization is based around the family.
Okay.
Right? So a man of this organization definitely should be not only an example in his community, but an example to his children, to his wife, to his nephews, his cousins, his uncles, his aunts, whoever.
Right,
right.
You
should, when you become a part of this organization, you are definitely the leading example of what a man should be.
Okay.
So that's very, very important that you're an upstanding man to not only to your family, but to your children and those around you.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, before we went to commercial break, we were talking about Prince Hall and the impact Prince Hall had directly in Georgia.
Right.
Being Savannah, Georgia, being one of the major hubs of Masonry in Georgia. Like, how did the Prince Hall Masonry get here? Where do we go? Where do we start?
So Prince Hall Masonry started in Georgia in 1870. That was when our first Grand Lodge was created.
Okay.
The first Grand Master was James Sims.
Okay.
And it was created under what we would call the National Compact or the National Grand Lodge.
Oh, wow.
So the National Grand Lodge was basically, it was like a governing body.
Okay.
That's a great way to put it. And the National Grand Lodge was started around 1847, 1849.
Okay.
And the purpose of the National Grand Lodge was to take all of the black lodges, all the black Grand Lodges around, and kind of put them under one umbrella.
Okay.
And keep them, kind of organize them and keep them going.
Okay.
Well, it was because of the National Grand Lodge Compact that the Grand Lodge of Georgia was created for colored men.
Okay.
All right. And I'll tell you a funny fact. Around about 1872, 1874, there was another Grand Lodge that was created. It was an independent Grand Lodge, and it was also for black men, for black masonry, right? And it was created by Robert Love, who was a Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Florida for black Masons.
Okay.
And he did not create it for the purpose of having another Grand Lodge in Georgia for black men.
Okay.
When you're talking about in the 1870s, early 1870s, a lot of the prominent black men were doctors, they were lawyers, they were doctors.
Okay.
So you look at Robert Love and James Sims, they kind of ran in the same circles.
Yeah.
The difference between Robert Love and James Sims is that Robert Love was a dark-skinned man. James Sims was a light-skinned man. So there was this society called the Blue Vein Society.
Okay.
During that time period. So Blue Vein Society, of course, it was for lighter-skinned mulatto men.
Okay.
Right? So there was prominent black men who were lighter skinned that was in this Blue Vein Society.
Okay.
Well, they wouldn't let Robert Love join. Right? So Robert Love said, okay, I got you.
Right.
I'm going to create another Grand Lodge in your state. And that's how the Independent Grand Lodge of Georgia was created.
Okay.
Eventually, both of those Grand Lodges would combine to make the Grand Lodge that we know of today.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now I want you to go hit on this Robert Love guy and James Sims. So where did they kind of intertwine at, and because I mean that's almost like a battle from within, a darker black person, a lighter black person. Like how did that battle create, and how did it even out and come to where it is for what it represents today? Well,
like I said, really they just Robert Sims and James, or Robert Love and James Sims, they kind of just bumped heads because of their professions.
Okay.
I believe they were both pastors at the time. I think they were pastors. So they kind of just bumped heads. Okay. That's all it was. And they were not responsible for the two Grand Lodges combining.
Okay.
Right? So the reason that those two Grand Lodges combined was because of what we would call the Delaware Convention.
Okay.
The Delaware Convention was basically all of the lodges in the country coming together. So you're talking about the lodges, the Grand Lodges that was under the National Grand Lodge, and the Independent Grand Lodges coming together to say, hey, we need to create some solidarity. We don't need two black Grand Lodges in every state. We don't need that. So they came together during the Delaware Convention in 1878 and decided that they were going to come together to create just one Grand Lodge in each state.
Okay.
So Robert Love and James Sims, that was way after their time.
Okay.
Had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But that's how we got the Grand Lodge, the Most Social Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia.
Okay.
Of course, there were other things that went into play during that time period too, which is the cause of the clandestine organizations that we know of today as well.
Okay.
So we're talking about your Prince Hall of Origin, the National Grand Lodge bodies that exist today, because the National Grand Lodge was not supposed to exist.
Right.
After the Delaware Convention.
Okay.
The National Grand Lodge was supposed to disappear, and all of the Grand Lodges in each state was supposed to be sovereign, which means that they don't have a governing body. They're independent in their own right.
Okay.
So there was some things that happened after the combining of the Grand Lodges, where the National Grand Lodge continued to exist. It wasn't supposed to.
Right.
So, after a certain period, we'd say roughly about 1882, the continuance of the National Grand Lodge would have been considered clandestine because they were not under a governing body.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow. And so it looks like, this Freed and Accepted Masons in these states, and they came across where it was like James Sims and Robert Love played a role where they were trying to establish these lodges, and then we go back to Prince Hall, and then propel Prince Hall back to where we're moving forward today in Masonry. Am I correct?
Well, of course, Robert Love, during the time period of Robert Love and James Sims, it wasn't called Prince Hall Freemasonry.
Okay.
That didn't come into play until I believe like the 1940s.
Okay.
So it was basically just Black Freemasonry.
Okay.
Right, and then you had the National Grand Body, which would, that's everything under the National Grand Lodge.
Okay.
Right. So, and then you would have with Robert Love, the Independent Grand Lodge of Georgia for Black Masons.
Okay.
There was a time where we were called the Union Grand Lodge of Georgia. So it changed names over the years a few times.
Okay.
So we eventually became the Prince Hall Grand Lodge in honor of Prince Hall.
Okay.
So we eventually became the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia.
So we're talking 1940, right before the time, or right during the time John Wesley Dobbs was
during his time period.
During his time period. So now we see the game changing in Freemasonry amongst African American Freemasons. What was going on during this time? And I know we talked about John Wesley Dobbs advocating for the police officers, Black police officers in the community, working hand in hand with government.
Yeah.
So where does that era take us to where we are now?
In what sense?
And as far as like where Masons are at today, advocating in under the same criteria, like the way John Wesley Dobbs.
Well, I think there was a time period where we kind of took a step back.
Okay.
And we just focused more on just being a part of the organization.
Okay.
And not being so much in the community or being politics. Now, the organization overall is nonpartisan.
Right.
We're not political at all.
Okay.
But there were time periods where we worked directly with our representatives.
Okay.
As far as the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, now those are things that we're getting back to. So even for James R. A.C. Lodge, we work with a lot of our representatives in the county, in each one of the cities, to kind of build that solidarity and give us, an opportunity to reach the community even more. Okay. So we're trying to get back to that, and I'm trying to do my part in the county. So what you see is you'll see us work with the commissioners of the different districts. You'll see us out in the community with the different commissioners. You'll see actually some of your representatives are members of our lodge and of our organization. So we're trying to do our part to reach the community the best way that we can, whether it's through our food giveaways, through the things that we do with the elementary schools, the things that we're going to be doing with the middle schools and the high schools out here. Whether you see us out cleaning the roads, you will see us at the town hall meetings.
Yes.
You see us. You see us. As you said, you look up, you see me everywhere. Right?
Everywhere.
Because we're trying to do our best to not only serve the community, but represent what is best for the community as well. Okay. So overall, our organization here in Georgia, that's what we're trying to get back to. We're trying to represent and support the community the best way that we can.
Right. Now, and I can see, just watching you guys in the community, watching the things that are happening. It's not just about wearing the emblem on your chest.
Oh, no, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because it's almost like we, just looking on the internet, we got a lot of people who just like to wear the paraphernalia and, tell us about the difference between wearing the paraphernalia and actually doing the work that of a Mason man.
Well, I'm going to tell you. You wear that emblem,
yes, sir.
You better be ready to represent it, right?
Absolutely.
So you're always going to have those people who are, I would say, they're better followers than they are leaders.
Okay.
Right? So you're always going to have leaders in your organization, no matter what organization it is.
Okay.
You're always going to have leaders in your organization, and you're going to have those people kind of waiting for somebody to tell them what to do.
Okay.
So even when we talk about people just wearing their paraphernalia, I don't think they're just wearing it. I think they're just waiting for somebody to say, hey, man, come, let's go do this real quick.
Yeah.
In my own experience as being the leader of James Earl Acey's Lodge, what I have learned is a lot of times people want to do something. They just don't know how to do it.
Right.
And there are some of us that are set aside to be great leaders.
Okay.
And I would say I was set aside to be a great leader because
Absolutely.
what we have experienced in this lodge is that a lot of these brothers now are a part of something. They're doing something. They're getting out there. They're coming up with great ideas. They're implementing those ideas, and they're out in the community more.
Okay.
So I think it's just more or less that we need to, find somebody to lead, rather than just waiting for somebody, to do something.
Yes.
That also plays into our community, right? When we talk about our young men, we're so hard on our young men.
Man.
Right? We always talk about what they're not doing, and, all the messed up stuff that they are doing. You know what I've learned about a lot of these young men? They're warriors at heart.
Man.
They are warriors at heart. All they need is a good leader.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
So I picture, or I envision that this organization can help build those leaders to help these young men, right?
Man, you saying it.
Because that's what we've done in the past. That's what we're continuing to do. So I'm more likely to try and help that young man than to say, oh man, that kid is a lost cause. I don't believe anybody's a lost cause.
At all.
If you're in a room of 100 people and only one person listens out of that 100,
yes, sir,
you're still succeeding.
You're
That's still a
succeeding.
victory.
Man, that is so awesome, and it goes back when you talk about the young men, the young males of today being warriors. I see that every day working with our organization, Streets of Gentlemen. I am seeing, a lot of people want to say, hey man, they got these dreads and they got these locks and they all hanging and they can't even get a job. But what I'm seeing in these young men is that their grace is in their locks, and they are warriors, and they're willing to create avenues of learning and growing and providing for their family. They just need the guidance. And one thing about me growing up, seeing the Masons operate, I live like that today.
Right, absolutely. One thing that you learn too is people fear what they don't understand. Right. So even when we talk about the propaganda that was created about this organization, about Freemasonry, about Prince Hall Freemasonry, it's a fear of what people don't understand. So even when we talk about the young men, how they have their locks and everything, and how they dress and things like that, can we change some of it? Yes. Okay. But I'm not against their locks.
Not at all.
And I think it's just more or less the fear of not really understanding the meaning behind it and how important it is to these young men and their culture.
Right.
What we have to remember that the young men or black people in this country, period, have lost their legacy for hundreds and hundreds of years. So now you are seeing these young people trying to get back to their roots. Ooh. So why do we want to take that from them? Man. So instead of us judging them and passing judgment on them, I think it's more important that we need to teach them how to play the game. The one thing that I always say is that you have to learn the game, to play the game, to beat the game, to change the game.
Man, you gotta change the game. What? Speaking of young men, speaking of men making a good man a better man.
Yes.
What's next for James Earl Acey as far as I know you guys are in the schools, but is there any type of program you guys have where you're mentoring and working hand in hand with young men in the community, or you got plans? What's next? Because I know it's a lot of single mothers out here and mothers who have husbands in the home,
yes,
who are looking to get their sons or their nephews or their brother around good men of moral character.
So here in Henry County, what you see is each city, you're talking Stockbridge, McDonough, Locust Grove, Hampton, all of those cities are creating their own youth programs, their youth councils, right? Okay. So what we're trying to do at James Earl Acey is we're trying to leverage that to also help the young men that are going to be in these areas, these youth councils, these youth groups.
Gotcha.
And to be a part of what we call our Knights of Pythagoras.
Okay.
Which is basically our mentorship or mentor group for young men.
Okay.
Right? So they'll be directly connected to our lodge, and we will mentor them.
Okay.
We will provide them from as early as 7, 8 years old, all the way until they, college, 20 some years old. We will provide them with mentorship. There will be somebody that they can talk to.
Okay.
Right? Now that's just here in Henry County.
Okay.
The KOP actually exists all over Georgia.
Wow.
So it's not just something that we're doing. Our Grand Lodge also provides that same program in Atlanta and the outer lane cities
Okay.
of outside of Atlanta. So the KOP is definitely accessible.
Okay.
To anybody.
Yes.
It's just more or less just trying to reach out to them. And if somebody wants to find, the KOP in their area, you're more than welcome to reach out to myself or any of the brothers from James O. AC Lodge. We are on Facebook under James O. AC number 600, and we will point you in the right direction because we are very, very focused on helping the young men.
Man, that's huge, man, because I know growing up, we were a part of like Knights of Pythagoras, and just being able to work up under solid leadership,
Right. man.
Man, it set those gems and those stones of who we are today,
Right.
And so now it was talking about bringing those young men in. We just had a situation in college where a young man got hazed.
Right.
Right. Now, over the years, we've seen it, organizations saying, "Hey, man, the Mason boy, they're gonna whoop you boy when you get up in there." Like, what does that look like? I mean, how do Masons feel about when bringing like young men in or bringing in new people? I know everybody has their way, but how do Masons feel today about hazing? With the risk of kids dying, we just seen that recently at the college. Tell us what that looks like.
So, the Most Honorable Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia actually has a no hazing policy.
Okay.
So we don't do any hazing whatsoever.
Okay.
What we focus on is knowledge. We want you to learn what you need to learn, understand what you're a part of, and being able to apply the knowledge that we provide to you.
Okay.
We don't do any hazing whatsoever. So that whole ideology, when you come in, they gonna do this, no, we're not gonna do any of that. If the most I'll probably do is give you a hug, man. I might give you a good talking to, but that's probably it, man.
That's it.
If you don't like me giving you a good talking to, I'm sorry, but that's most what you're gonna get from James O. AC Lodge and any lodge under the Most Honorable Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia.
Okay. Because back in the day, man, it used to be kind of there, So
I've heard some things,
okay.
but as of now, we don't do stuff like that.
Okay.
We're more focused on actually learning and knowing the things that you need to know.
Man, anything you would like to leave with our audience, man? First of all, we want to thank you for taking out the time and sharing your story. Anything you would like to share with our audience before we leave?
Yes, I would like to say, before we pass judgment on anything, we need to first understand, what we're taking a look at, what we're a part of, and what we're doing.
Okay.
Right? And another thing is, I think it's very important that we understand the history of our people.
Wow.
Right? So to keep from repeating the failures of our past, we have to first understand what those failures were.
Okay.
What we were a part of, what happened to our people. Now that doesn't mean that you leave with anger, but you leave with understanding.
Yes.
Once you understand what your ancestors have gone through, what your great-grandparents, grandparents, whomsoever, what they went through, it makes it easier for you to move forward. Again, we have to learn how to play the game.
Right.
First things first, you gotta play the game.
Man, you heard it right here on Voices of the Village podcast. Worshipful Master Ricardo Ute, James Earl AC Lodge number 600, right here in Henry County. How can if I wanted to be a Mason as a man, how can I join? Can I just come? Not like what do I have to do? Because what's required?
Well, ask one to be one.
Okay.
That's what you'll hear most of us say. But no, the first thing you need to do, you can go to the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia
Okay.
website, and there is an option down there for somebody to get in contact with you. Also, if you want to be a part of the Grand Lodge of Georgia, you can do the same thing there as well. Of course, I'm partial to my, Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia. I love Grand Lodge of Georgia, Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia.
Absolutely.
Also, if you do know a legitimate Mason,
Okay.
a Prince Hall Mason or a Grand Lodge Estate Mason, you can ask them as well. That's where the moniker "to be one, ask one" comes from. Okay. Because we don't recruit at all.
Right.
So you actually have to come to us. You have to ask us to be one. Okay. And that is the best way to do it. Either visit our website or speak to an actual member of our organization, and it'll go from there.
Man, that's awesome, man. We want to, again, thank you for taking the time out sharing this. Now, I know for a fact we're going to have to come back for part 2 because I know for a fact, because I know on TikTok we're going to be taking some shots and people are going to be taking some shots at some of the things, but we have to put things in order and we have to make sure that the real is put out there. It's two sides to every story. And we just want to make sure that people get informed the right way. You guys, thank you for tuning in. Game Changers Magazine, Game Changers Media Network, Voices of the Village podcast, where change starts with conversation. Worshipful Master, Ricardo Ute, James Earl AC, Lodge number 600. Thank you for tuning in.
Justice and peace and equality. Now the world they will see.